Assalamu alaikum, story timers. How is everybody doing today? I hope you guys have been having a wonderful day and a lovely week. And we are back again with another story, continuing on with the story of Prophet Noor. And this is actually going to be the end. So we are going to learn about the big ending to the story of Prophet Noor and his people. So I hope you guys are ready and focused, and let's get started. So, first, before we get started, let's go over a reminder of the Prophet Noor's story. So, first, who was Prophet Noor? Prophet Noor was part of the people sent by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide his people back to Islam. And this was over 1,000 years after Prophet Adam alayhi salam. His people started to worship the memories of their grandfathers and idols, and they listened to the whispers of the shaitan telling them that this was better than worshiping Allah. Wa'udhu billah. And Noah alayhi salam tried to persuade his people to come back to the right path. Unfortunately, his people refused to listen. They didn't want to follow Prophet Noor. And not only did they disbelieve in Allah and they didn't want to listen, but they used to shut their ears and laugh at the people who did listen to Prophet Noor alayhi salam. This was very rude, but they used to laugh at them and say, you were poor people and we are better than you because we have more money and we are rich. But this is not the way to behave. And they even tried to bargain with Prophet Noor. They thought that if they were to ask Prophet Noor, or if they were to tell Prophet Noor that they would give them money and follow him, then he would abandon the poor people who did follow him. They said, if you get rid of those people, then we will follow you. But Prophet Noor was fair and just, and he believed in all people, that they were all equal, and did not discriminate and be mean to people just because they were poor. And so he refused. He said he will not abandon people who believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Prophet Noor continued to preach, and the people were getting closer and closer to the wrath and anger of Allah. And so here we are today. We are going to learn how this story ended and if the disbelievers truly got the anger of Allah or if they repented for their ways. Prophet Noor actually called his people to believe in Allah for a long, long, long time. Can you believe that he actually was trying to get his people to worship Allah for over 950 years? That's almost 1,000 years of trying to call people to Allah. He had a lot of patience and faith and belief in Allah, and he wanted to do his duty to Allah and not disappoint him. And so he patiently called his people to Allah for a little less than 1,000 years. And people during this time lived a little longer. If you wonder how was Prophet Noor able to live so long, it's because during this time people lived much longer than they do now. And Prophet Adam and Prophet Noor, those people, they were very, very, very old. Time was different then. And they were also really, really tall, almost as tall as the Eiffel Tower, maybe taller. All right, let's go back to the story. So, over and over again, he tried to call his people to worship Allah alone, and they didn't listen. And not only did they listen, but they started to get angry with him. And they started to want war against him. They disbelieved in him, and they threatened that if he and his people continued to try to tell them about Allah, then they will kill him. This frightened Prophet Noor, but he wanted to continue his duty to Allah and be patient and call his people to Islam no matter what threat they gave to them. Unfortunately, even Prophet Noor's son was a disbeliever, and he tried to call his son to Islam. He tried to tell him that Islam was the better way to go, and that was the best success, that the truth was in following Islam. But still, Prophet Noor's son and his people refused to listen. So, eventually, things became worse and worse. Prophet Noor was frustrated. He didn't know what to do. The people weren't listening. His son wasn't listening. They were threatening him. They were threatening those who followed him. And it had been almost 1,000 years. What can he do? Day in and day out, day in and day out. He says, come to Allah, come back to Allah, but the people are not listening. So Prophet Noor felt frustrated and sad. He didn't know what to do, and he asked Allah for guidance. He asked him, Ya Allah, oh Allah, please punish these disbelievers. They are a threat. They are trying to mislead your slaves. If you leave them alone, I'm afraid that they are going to call everybody against you. And they are not good people. Oh Allah, bring them to justice. So Prophet Noor asked Allah to finally bring his punishment and show the disbelievers how wrong they are and how Allah's anger is very, very serious. He begged Allah for guidance and protection for his own people. And he cried and cried, begging Allah for his punishment against those evil, disbelieving people. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heard Prophet Noor's dua. He heard and he understood, and he inspired Prophet Noor and told him, don't worry, don't be sad, Prophet Noor. Allah will help you. Allah will help you. And after that, things got very, very serious. The case was closed. Allah promised Noor that those disbelieving people will be punished for the evil that they were doing. He ordered Prophet Noor to build an ark. An ark is a big, big ship. It's a big ship that goes into the seas and the ocean. Some of you may know this part of the story now. So he instructed Prophet Noor to build an ark. And on that ark, all of the guided people, all of the Muslims and the animals will go on. So Prophet Noor did just that. He obeyed Allah. And in the middle of nowhere, far from the sea, so it's almost like a desert, there was a lot of sand and a lot of rocks, and some say it was even in between mountains. So there was no water in sight. It looked funny to be building an ark, a ship, in the middle of nowhere. And Prophet Noor's people laughed at him arrogantly. You crazy Prophet Noor. Have you gone crazy now? Have you gone mad that you are building an ark where there is no water? They started to mock him. They asked him mockingly if he decided to give up prophethood and if he no longer wanted to tell them about Islam, but he was more interested in building ships instead. He said, "Where's the water that you so-called say is going to come? Are you crazy to build an ark in the desert?" They said bad words to him, poking him and making fun of him, bullying him and being really, really mean. However, every time that the disbeliever says something bad about him, Prophet Noor would be silent. He would only say, "You laugh at us, but you are really going to be laughing at yourself because the punishment of Allah is coming." He was patient. He was patient and he didn't let their bad words get to him. He didn't let their bad words hurt his feelings because he knew that he was on the right side and that he was following the command of Allah and that Allah's promise would be true. The disbelievers will see punishment very, very soon. And this is a picture of how it may have looked. So you can imagine, you can see there's no water nearby. No water. It's all desert. I actually live in a place where there's a lot of rocks like this too. There's a lot of rocks and mountains, and it's a little bit hot. There's never any snow, even though it may be snowing where you are. There's no snow in these kind of areas, and it's very, very little rain. So nobody could believe what was about to happen next. Suddenly, the flood was starting. As soon as Prophet Noah completed the ark or the ship, he started to wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's next command. Allah told him that water will gush forth from the house of Prophet Noah, and that will be the sign that the flood is coming. So Prophet Noah was patient, and he waited, and he waited, and days went by, and the disbelievers continued to laugh, and Prophet Noah said that the flood will be coming, although it didn't come right away. Days and days and days went by. And then suddenly, a terrible day came when the wind was strong and a flood of water gushed into Prophet Noah's house and broke the oven and crashed into the tables. And suddenly the house came tumbling down, overflowing with water. That was the sign Prophet Noah was waiting for. He called upon the people and they raced to the ship. He said, "Oh, my people, oh, believers, join us on the ship. Hurry up and come on the ship. The promise of Allah has come. The promise of Allah has come." And he called all of the people and he rushed to every house, letting the people know that it was time for the believers to join him on the ship. He came and he took with him every pair, male and female. He even took every kind of animals. He took elephants. He took cats. He took birds. He took monkeys. He even took insects such as ants. He took leopards. He took zebras. Every kind of animal that was around at the time, he took with him on the ship. And they all rushed as the rain came pouring onto their faces, tickling on their faces and dripping down, sweeping at their feet. The wind was blowing their clothes left and right. And the people, the disbelievers laughed. They said, "What are you doing, Prophet Noah? You really think that that boat can save you from this rain? This rain is going to pass. It's not going to be that bad. And what are you going to do with the animals? You think that those animals are really going to go with you?" But he didn't say anything. He just watched and gathered the animals and the people as the ovens and the ground shook with water. But the disbelievers were still standing there laughing. Oh, silly Prophet Noor, this is your punishment. It's just rain. We've seen rain before. Rain is good. Rain doesn't do anything for us. We don't believe in you. We will not go with you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspired Prophet Noor to leave those disbelievers behind, including Prophet Noor's son. And Prophet Noor's son actually climbed on the top of the mountain. Prophet Noor said, invoke Allah to protect you. Come with the believers. Believe in Allah and come with us. But Prophet Noor's son stayed with the disbelievers, and he believed that the rain would not harm him as long as he stayed in a safe area. But that was a very big mistake. Nobody was safe except for those whom Allah chose. The water gushed and the waves ran higher. The waves threw over the people's head and rushed and pushed Prophet Noah's son off of the cliff. He was swept along with the water and drowned with all of the disbelievers. Those who disbelieved were all swimming and buried underneath the water, and nothing survived except for the Muslims and the animals. So that is what happened to Prophet Noah's people and the people who arrogantly opposed Allah. Prophet Noah's wife and son, unfortunately, were not Muslims, and so they were also punished because they refused to believe in Allah. Some people say that there were 72 believers on the ship that day. Some people say that it was only 10. But what we do know, no matter the number, is that the believers and the animals were all safe and saved and happy from Allah's punishment. This is an idea of what the water looked like. You can see how it's gushing from all sides and very, very deep. The water is everywhere and moving really, really fast. So Prophet Noah actually went in the ark with his believers, and some say that they went for 10 days. And when they finally reached a safe place and the flood was over, they landed on the top of Mount Sinai. They landed there, and it was a beautiful garden where the birds and the animals were able to go free. Everybody was happy. The sun was shining bright. The sky was clear, and all the trees and flowers were able to grow again. And that is the end of what happened to Prophet Noah alayhi salam. I hope you guys enjoyed this story. It was such a wonderful story, and we learned a lot about the importance of patience. Prophet Noah was patient for a very long time. He was patient and he endured all of the bad words and bullying from his people. But at the end, Allah rewarded him and all of the believers. And just as he promised, he protected them and gave them better than all the troubles that they had gone through during the time of the disbelievers' rule over Prophet Noah and his people. Thank you so much for joining me for this story time. I am so happy to see that the believers were all safe. How do you feel about that? It just makes me feel overjoyed to be a believer. And we must always thank Allah and remember to ask Allah to keep us guided upon the straight path. Ameen. May Allah guide us always upon the straight path and protect us from His anger. Ameen. And also, anytime that you're feeling sad or if people are being bad to you, just remember to be patient because the promise of Allah is true and is coming. Thank you so much for joining us. And inshallah, we will see you next week with a whole new story and a new prophet and a wonderful, wonderful beginning to our next story, inshallah. Make sure that you join us, and I can't wait to see you there. Have a great day, guys. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi